Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my little library tour here. I am doing a visual record of my little book room, uh, the, that little sanctum sanctorum space that I think everybody should have. You could call it my study, I guess, although I sleep here. You could call it my den, although I don't drink here. You could call it a whole bunch of little things. It's a little room lined with books. And I thought I would do a visual representation of everything that I have at the beginning of 2025. That turns out to be pointless because I am using these books constantly, and when I pull them off the shelf, bring them into the fainting couch, put them on the footlocker, and use them, well, they sit there for a while, a week, once I'm done with them or whatnot, and then I bring them back in here to put them back on the shelf, but that space where they were has filled with something else in the meantime, and I have to put them somewhere else, which means that this is not a record of anything because the books are changing behind me. But you seem to be enjoying it, and I guess I am too. It's always fun to go through these books, although I go through these books. Lately I've thought that the way to salvage the idea of a library tour would be to start it somewhere else. Go somewhere else here at Hyde Cottage and start a library tour there where the books don't change quite so often. But maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll just spend all of 2025 looking at my books. So let's look at the next shelf here. And these shelves, this is another Joe bookcase. It's a Joe original, so it was made for me to my specifications. So I had two specifications. One could be like this or like this, where the bookcase is tall and thin. Tall and thin is the way to go with bookcases. Where the bookcase is tall and thin and exactly the right size and especially depth for a normal book. So with a bookcase like this, there's no space on the lip really for anything except knickknacks like Dante. There isn't space to double stack books. But I also gave Joe sometimes instructions to do the other kind of bookcase, the one over here, where the bookcase is tall and thin, yes, and it's the right height for a normal book, but it's deep so that you can stack things in front of it. And that's what this is. So we're going to have to deal with front stacked books. So let's just get them out of the way first before we deal with the ones. So what is this for? Oh, all right. Well, this first one is from Tuttle Books, the great Tuttle Books. This is Ugetto Monagatari by Ueda Akinari. It's an old Tuttle paperback of an 18th century collection of Japanese supernatural tales. This is translated by Leon Zollbrod. And these are really, really atmospheric. They're really good. Really, I don't want to say creepy. Some of them are creepy. They're more gently creepy, if that makes any sense. I don't know of an equivalent in the Western world, but these are wonderful, and this is a classic. I don't know why it isn't treated that way. It isn't in Penguin Classics, as far as I know, unless they've given it some sort of funny name. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, we have a classic of Renaissance literature, Italian Renaissance literature. This is Baldassare Castiglione. This is the Book of the Courtier. I have this in a couple of different editions and a couple of different translations. Is this this is the Charles Singleton translation. And I confess, I mainly have this paperback for the cover because I like the design of this thing. If this existed as a floppy trade paperback with this cover, or better yet, a hardcover with a dust jacket with this cover, I would eat it up. I would love it. Although I have found, I know this is going to be a broken record at this point, I have found that Castiglione is not terribly difficult to translate. He writes fairly straightforward. And yet I have found myself wondering, just squinting at the translator saying, okay, well, why did you do that? Why did you clean that up? Castiglione doesn't need you to do any favors for him. If he writes something a little ragged, a little sloppy, it's for a reason. Why did you clean that up? Anyway. Oh, all right. Then we have a big, fat, black mass market paperback of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer. I have a few copies of this book. I think there are 2 copies of this book in this room. It is great. It's a great work of history. It's a great study of Nazi Germany. We have the old white mass market paperback of The Once and Future King by T.H. White, with just a knight in front of a tree on the cover. That's it. That's all that it was. And forever and ever, this was the appearance of this book. I have this in a newer mass market paperback. I have it in a hardcover that is really, really ailing. That my hardcover really needs a replacement. The Brattle will provide. It hasn't lately, but it will provide. I even think there was once upon a time a trade paperback of this that was fairly durable. I'm all for it. This is a great, great book about King Arthur and his knights. It is not like anything that, if you've never read it, but you have read stuff about King Arthur, it's not like anything you're expecting. And I guess the point is, I mean, this is a neat, durable, this is a really tough mass market paperback, but I really need is a new hardcover of The Once and Future King, which does not mean you should send me one without telling me. If you're at a library book sale and you find a hardcover of The Once and Future King, feel free to let me know, and I will squeal, and you can send it. But don't send it blind. But anyway, then we have Walter Pater. This is his book, The Renaissance, his famous study of the Renaissance in modern library hardcover. I love it for its turns of phrase. He was a really, really good writer. I don't think you'd want to go to it. You'd want to go to it as one incredibly intelligent, bookish man's meditation on the Renaissance. I don't know that you'd want to go to it as your first port of call if you were reading a book about the Renaissance. Okay, then we have the book rack. No, no. This is a cover that could be put over a mass market paperback, any mass market paperback. It has these flaps so that you could slide a mass market paperback into this thing, which would protect it from coffee spills and whatnot, protect it from the elements. But crucially, and the reason why this says book rack on the cover, because that was a used bookstore that sold mostly romances. Crucially, this was also important if you were, I don't know, reading and enjoying a romance novel and you didn't want people on public transportation to know that. So you would put this on your book so you could take it out and read it on the bus or on the subway without anybody looking at you or tittering. Which always struck me as just, I have this. I found a book with this cover on it and had to keep it. But that idea has always struck me as bizarre. The people who are looking and tittering are either book snobs or people who don't read. And why would you care about the derision of either one of those? Why would you care about that at all? A book person is going to see that you're reading a romance novel and sidle up to you right away because they found a kindred spirit. They're not going to titter. They're not going to condescend. It's only going to be those two groups of people, book snobs and people who don't read at all. And yet, for especially in the 20th century, the latter half of the 20th century, you're a 40-something woman. You've got a job as an executive assistant or a floor coordinator at some Boston bank, and you love reading romance novels. Well, in your mind, in your heart, you're saying, "Well, I love reading what I love reading. I'm not going to read an improving book. I'm not going to change what I read because some man says it's more valuable to me as a person. This isn't my mother's generation." In your heart, you would say that, but you still felt a little self-conscious about reading that sort of stuff in public. So you would put this cover on it. Fortunately, I'm assuming we all use e-readers now, so we don't have to worry about that. The e-readers all look the same at all times. But the book that's in here is not a romance. It's an old everyman translation of Gerald of Wales, A Journey Through Wales. This is just an older translation. Penguin also does a translation of these. This was done by Gerald of Wales, Gerald of Cambrensis, who was once upon a time a hit author. You'd never know it, but 1,000 years ago he was a hit author. People loved his books and happily read them, happily traded them, and copied them. And he's, of course, completely forgotten now, but nevertheless, his itinerary through Wales is inadvertently hilarious. It's as you can tell from his name, he identified with the country of Wales, and yet, much like he did with Ireland, he finds it mostly inhabited by barbarians. So it's nice to know that some things never change. So those are the outward books. Then we can go to the books that are standing on the shelf. And we have, a Penguin classic, but it's not over with the Penguin classics. This is The Tale of the Hickey, translated by Royal Tyler. This is a terrific, epic story full of of bloodletting and betrayal and whatnot. It is a tonal counterpoint to the Tale of Genji, which is also done by Royal Tyler and is also a Penguin classic. It's a tonal counterpoint to that in almost every way. It's thrillingly wonderful. This has blurbs from the LA Times and the New York Times Book Review and the London Times Literary Supplement and Publishers Weekly, but everybody reviewed this when it came out. Everybody reviewed it, including, for the London Review of Books, Sam Sachs of the Wall Street Journal. Always nice to fold one of his reviews into a book. I reviewed it also, but I reviewed it for the National in Abu Dhabi on the other side of the world, so nobody ever knew that I did it. I had quite a bit of space to do it. Okay, then we have Odd Jobs by John Updike. There he is cosplaying as a man of the soil. An utterly ridiculous thing. This was such a ridiculous man. But this is a big collection of his occasional pieces, his literary stuff that he did. This is not his rancid, penis-obsessed fiction. This is instead someone would come out with a new biography of Thomas Paine, and he would consult his library, which was huge, or he would go to the New York Public Library and consult that, or whatever library was nearest. There was no internet. He would bone up on the subject, is what I'm trying to say. He would bone up on the subject, and then he would write a piece for the New Yorker or wherever about Tom Paine and that book. He was flooded in his later life with galley copies and review copies. People flooded him with those. And I find his literary occasional work good enough to have. The only reason that I scrimped a little, it was not because of John Updike and his ridiculous cosplay, but because I have these. I have a uniform trade paper set. These were brought out years later. All of his books like this were brought out years later in a beautiful uniform trade paperback set, which I have over on the wall, devoted to books about books and books about authors. So this is in here, and it's a duplicate, an unwieldy duplicate. And same thing with this one. This is Essays and Undue Considerations, Essays and Criticism. And again, we have a cosplaying picture of Updike as the weathered old sage deep thinker when he was a ninny. But he could turn out good prose on this subject. These are good books. I go back to them. I just don't know why either one of them is... Well, anyway, we don't have to dwell on it. This next one will be familiar to you from Joe Spivey's channel lately. I have sung its praises on this channel for the better part of a decade. This is the Assassin's Cloak. This is in the trade paperback with the deckled edge, or the French flaps. This is a gigantic anthology of diaries that is arranged by day instead of by period or by literary trend or whatnot. It's arranged by day. So today is May the 24th. You can just turn to May the 24th. People do this all the time. They do this absolutely all the time. That's what makes it such a great bedside book, a nightstand book, is that you can just turn to your day and read the diary entries for that day. So for May the 24th, we have an entry from 1685 from John Evelyn. We have an entry from 1902 from Robert Musil. And we have an entry from 1958 from Stephen Spender, who's writing in Tokyo. Went to dinner with the professors, a Miss S. from Pittsburgh, and others. For some reason, we got onto the subject of Beethoven, and I told them about a recently published biography which portrays Beethoven as the brutal persecutor of his sister-in-law, from whom, after the death of his brother, he successfully stole his nephew Karl, in whose life he tried to enact the role of a mother. Miss S. was quite dismayed. Quote, "You do disappoint me, Mr. Spender. Until now, I'd always thought that his music was so beautiful. In fact, one of the things I used to look forward to after I was dead was meeting Beethoven to tell him how much I appreciated his music on earth." So, you don't know what you're going to get in any of these entries. In the case of May the 24th, we are not well served because both John Evelyn and Stephen Spender never wrote a true word in their diaries. But nevertheless, sometimes you will get what actually happened and what was actually said to these people. And it's great. It's addictive. I have to make an effort not to have it on my nightstand all the time. Then we have Thomas Mallon. This is his book, Yours Ever. And this is, I don't want to say a love letter, but this is a study, a very affectionate study of snail mail, of the whole phenomenon of snail mail, that phenomenon that is pictured on the cover that those of you born in the 21st century never experienced and aren't likely to experience again. When there was no internet, when there was no email, all through the snail mail era, in my mind, I would imagine something that was science fiction-y. And science fiction often imagined it too. Some alternative to snail mail that was much faster, that was much closer to a phone call, but still written. We had phones, and you could call someone, but phone calls were a nightmare then and now. The phone calls were a nightmare. You didn't know how long they were going to be. You were trapped in them. You couldn't get out. You couldn't make it. We made excuses all the time to end a phone call, but you never knew when it was going to happen, and you never knew when it was going to be something important, so you had to answer every time the phone rang. I always considered it a nightmare. I spent plenty of time on the phone, but I considered it a nightmare. I much preferred snail mail, much as I prefer Voxer today, the app Voxer, because you get your messages, but you're not trapped with the person. They're not waiting on the line. They send you a message, and you can return when you want. But before all of that, I imagined that. I imagined that those things might happen, but I didn't really believe it. I was sure that snail mail would be with us forever. I was bolstered in that by the Legion of Superheroes, my beloved Legion of Superheroes, when they first appeared in Adventure Comics. They take Superboy 1,000 years into the future, where they're from. And what does Superboy see? He sees robots, yes, but they're delivering the mail. They're delivering snail mail. So I just assumed it would be with us forever. And I was wholeheartedly involved in it, just wholeheartedly. I worked at a desk at the time, and I didn't always write my personal mail at the desk. I would often write that on a board with my dogs all around me, sitting up on pillows in bed, the way God intended. But I did other snail mail, especially typed snail mail, at the desk. And I had a stack of paper, 2 different kinds of paper, heavy bond, a non-transparent paper for business correspondence, and foolscap, actual foolscap for personal correspondence, not because I was cheap with my friends, but because foolscap was much thinner and much lighter, which meant I could write a 10-page letter without costing any more postage. And I had those things ready. On the left-hand side of the typewriter was the stuff that needed to be done, to go through the typewriter or to be typed clean or whatnot. And then on the right-hand side of the typewriter was a stack of envelopes, a roll of stamps. And that was just the morning, was doing correspondence all morning long. And then the nice thing about snail mail is no one really considered it all that urgent. If you were incredibly urgent and you didn't have the ability to use the phone, if you didn't know how to contact the person on the phone, then you would use a telegram. But otherwise, snail mail was a little more relaxed, sometimes a lot more relaxed. And that was both a blessing, because I could just let the mail pile up during the day and do it in the morning first thing, and also a curse, because snail mail's letters could often be urgent. You could often urgently want to hear back from someone, and you weren't going to. You would count the days. I would bring a crowd of beagles to the post office box. I would put the letters in there, and then we would walk and we would talk, and I would come back home, and I would know, well, I got to the mailbox at 3 p.m, and there's no afternoon pickup at that mailbox. It's picked up at 1. So it's not going to be picked up until 1 tomorrow. So that letter is not even going to be on its way until 1 o'clock tomorrow. And then, well, it's got to go to a processing center, and then it's got to travel to my recipient in Michigan or California or Oregon or wherever. And then they've got to read it. It's got to be delivered to them, and they've got to read it. And then they've got their own setup at their end. And maybe it's not so, businesslike as yours. Maybe they take a while to respond. So when can you start expecting a reply? Oh, all those ecstasies, all those agonies, and they're all gone. That's all gone. Now we have email, and Voxer and messages like it, so that we can contact people immediately. And Yours Ever is a good book on the subject. I keep thinking, I mean, Thomas Mallard's good on this. He has a good book on personal diaries as well, that I think is right behind me. But when it comes to snail mail letters, I keep thinking there's a better book to be written, a much bigger and better book, since this isn't coming back. But maybe that's been written, and I just don't know about it. Then we have A Treasury of English Wildlife. Some of you pointed this out to me just recently. This is from the Britain in Pictures series. And this is a combination of a couple of those books. So this has, let me get you a picture of what I'm talking about. These are wonderful, wonderful books. They're mostly thin. This one is not. This one is bigger because this one combines a few of them. They have full color and black and white illustrations, and they just are an amble through their subject. The railways of Britain, the canals of Britain, in this case, the wildlife of Britain. I just recently found the birds of Britain, which is entirely contained in this volume, but I got it anyway. What is this thing? Oh, okay. Well, this is from 2003, or 2023. This is Dan Sinkin's book, Big Fiction, a book about the publishing industry that is really, really good. This is the galley copy. I thought I had a finished copy of this, and I thought the finished copy was also in this room. I guess I'll find out. I liked it a lot, but it ought not to be here anyway. Galley or a finished copy, it ought not to be here. It's really, really good, but it belongs out with the books about books. It isn't a little book room book at all. Okay. Then we have a gift from one of you, an amazing gift. Every once in a while, like I mentioned, there's a rule number 1 on this channel: don't send me books blind. But you are, by all means, encouraged to look for books for me if you think that I might like them. And one of you found the motherlode, UK hardcovers and trade paperbacks of P.D. James. This is Death in Holy Orders. One of you just found all of these and put them in a box and sent the whole thing. Here is a hardcover of Devices and Desires. How wonderful. How absolutely wonderful. We have The Murder Room. Here's a trade paperback, The Private Patient. I have a sweet tooth for UK editions of books. I tend to like them better. Here is A Certain Justice. Look at that. Look at that. And Original Sin. So I don't have all of them, but I have quite a few, and it's wonderful. I love this whole look here. I sometimes see this design in UK trade paperbacks here, but they with the P.D. James, they're usually so well loved. They're so creased and well loved because she's such a favorite author. A favorite author of mine. I was paying when I was out of the reviewing world. I was out of the reviewing world for a quarter of a century, and that was the quarter of a century when she had her career. And I would read her books and just love them, and really wish that I could write about them for an audience. Really wish that I could do that. And I never actually did get to do that. Instead, ironically, the thing about her that I got to write for the Washington Post was her obituary, that was a little bittersweet. And then finally, we have this big thing: New England Highways and Byways from a Motor Car. And that, you kids down there, that thing right there is a motor car. and this is the kind of book that started to be written. When was this? What is the date on this thing? Well, it doesn't say, but it would have been in the 1920s. This is when motor cars started to become more accessible to the public. When, if you could scrounge up $700, you could buy a motor car. And suddenly, when that happened, your world changed. Suddenly, you had free, unimpeded access to a much bigger world. So you could, and this is still true, obviously, as I know, since when I have a guest who can drive, suddenly my world opens up. Suddenly I can go to Walmart. but these books started to crop up like toadstools when that happened, where all of a sudden you wanted big illustrated guides to that broader world. You wanted pictures of places that you could go and ogle, where you could drive your car. And this is wonderful. It's a little bit stiff with age, but it is wonderful. And I would the Highways and Byways series covered a lot more than just New England. I'd love to find more of them. They will turn up at the shop. It's just, you can't predict these things. And there you go. That is another shelf in this library tour, which I would say has an enormous amount of shelves left, but it also has an enormous amount of shelves behind us. They may be changing. They may be all different than when we went through them. But anyway, I'm not going to get on that rant. So I'll wrap this up, and we'll move on to the next shelf next time. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.